This is another Frank Collab.
I've always had an ability to do voices that I hear because of how I grew up. And this is not a joke. Everybody in my family is deaf. When I do impressions now, I always think of the person and then the voice just kind of comes out. You know, Christopher Walken has a crazy look where he seems kind of off. Or Adam Sandler, he won't, look you in the eye because he's nervous.
Because you started at a level of no hearing or so on and so forth, people can sort of almost go, well, this is me, this is the cards I've been dealt with, and I'll just stick at this sort of, I'm not going to sort of go off and achieve these amazing things that you did.
15, 16 years old, and my friends would say, hey, Craig, if we give you cocaine, will you do some impressions for us? And I went, yeah.
It would be probably that first taste of, this is really good. I'm getting people wanting me and wanting me to do the thing, and you're uncensored. I'm imagining under cocaine, it's like you've got all the confidence.
The only reason I drink and do drugs is because I think, despite what everybody's telling me, I think I feel great. Okay, my brain is telling me, ooh, I want to eat that. Ooh, it would feel good to do that. But what would my organs in my body tell me if my organs could talk? If you watch The Roast of Gene Simmons, the audience is made up of musician friends of mine. It's, I was so proud of my guest list. Yeah. I was 20 years old. You had to be 21 to get into the club. So I snuck in, I signed up for an open mic, and I invited 30 of my friends to come watch me. And I did not know that comedians prepared material. It looks like you're just talking up there. And I thought, oh, well, I can do that. And before I went on stage, I went, I'm funny. I belong here. I'm funny. And I belong here. And I went on stage. I couldn't believe how easy it was. It was the easy. Not only was it easy, it was like, oh, dude, I could do this. I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it.
Yeah. Welcome to Stand Up Again with Sophie and Nick Rado.
Today's guest is an international stand-up comedian, an incredible impressionist. He's been in the biggest shows, Sex and the City, Family Guy, SNL. He's been a regular co-host in fact, Howard Stern shows, and just very well known all around in the comedy scene.
He's going to be talking today about starting out with having deaf parents and learning how to do impressions and voices by watching the TV. He talks about addiction, how he comes through it, and also the greatest piece of advice if you're ever about to give up on something or give up on yourself, and how to, most importantly, stand up again. Today's guest is Craig Gass. Okay, Craig Gass, thank you so much for coming on to the Stand Up Again with Sophie and Nick Rado show, and live from Las Vegas, of all places. Very
this is international
very
today.
showbiz for us here in little old New Zealand.
Wow.
Yes, but we want to talk to you, Craig. There's so many stories that we can go for, but just to give a little bit of a rundown for people at home who may or may not know Craig Gass, voice and star of Family Guy.
You're out of order. And you're out of order. And you're all out of order.
You've got Sex and the City performances.
We weren't very good together. She was very critical. The more she put me down, the more I ate. And to this day, whenever somebody criticizes me, I go right for those.
Oh, glazed.
You've got King of Queens.
You guys like Adam Sandler?
Oh, yeah.
Here's some Adam Sandler for you. Hey, you guys are very nice people. I've had a great time on my first day. I just don't know what IPS stands for. I think it stands for immature people sitting around doing nothing.
So you've got so many other, you've got a list.
SNL writer, stand-up comedy.
All of these different things going for you and what you had done. Podcast as well, which we'll get to. All of those amazing achievements, mate. But we want to, so outside looking in, looking at the iceberg, what was the perceived high and what has been the perceived high so far for you? Because sometimes it's different to, the credits, if that makes sense.
I think the perceived high, you mean from like the outside looking in?
Yeah.
What was the perceived high?
Yeah.
I think, well, it depends. Like, fans of Sex and the City, they think that's the greatest show of all time.
Sure.
Fans of Family Guy, like myself, that's a big deal. But my first big, it all started because of Howard Stern. Howard Stern, who's had me on his show for years, he started having me come in to audition to be his sidekick on the show. It was supposed to be a 2-day audition, and it turned into 2 days a week every week for about 10 months, I think.
Wow.
And that launched me into the consciousness of television and animation and film, so that everything just started happening quickly from there. And when I got on Sex and the City, I started getting auditions for all the shows that were on HBO, for Entourage and The Sopranos, and et cetera, et cetera. Which, by the way, there's the casting director for all those HBO shows is a woman by the name of Georgianne Walken. She is Christopher Walken's wife.
Right.
And every time I read for her for an audition, she always, at the end of the audition, she'll go, "All right, do you feel good about that?" And I go, "I feel okay about it." And she'll say, "Okay, do you mind doing it one more time as my husband?" And I'll go, "Sure." and then I'll redo the entire audition. Like there was a really short one for The Sopranos. It was just like a doctor. I don't think he even had a name, but he was a doctor. And it was Tony, I did everything I could. He's gone. And she goes, "All right, you feel good about that?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, I feel good about it." She goes, "All right, you want to do it one more time as my husband?" And I was like, "All right, are you ready?" Okay. "Tony, I did everything I could. He's gone." Pow. Listen, that was like every audition I ever did for everything for HBO. I would like redo everything as Christopher Walken. So
Amazing.
That made you get the job properly.
But
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can we go to that Sex and the City audition then? So, like, how did you get that? Like, what was the build up to that? Because you've been doing stand up, and like the role goes.
Well, I'm laughing because it's not a flattering story.
Yeah.
I was on the air on Howard Stern talking about a breakup that I was going through, and I was really heartbroken about what was going on. I was very sensitive and delicate, and Gary, our producer for the show, said,
Hey, so I just got a phone call from somebody from HBO. They want to talk to you about having you on Sex and the City. You got to give them a call.
and I called this phone number, and this woman who was a casting director for Sex and the City said, "Hey, so we were all in the office today listening to you and talking about your breakup, and we think that you would play a really good insecure guy on Sex and the City." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." Like, I don't know how to react to that. And they go, "But just so you know, there's also this thing that it's very intimate, but the character that we want you to audition for, it's a very intimate character. You love to perform."
Yeah.
On this, you're gonna date a character named Miranda, and you love to perform, and she has such a huge reaction to you performing on her that she explodes all over your face, and you're such a sensitive guy that you just want to hold her and just kiss her afterwards, which freaks her out because your face is always going to be covered in Miranda. So, So, do you have any questions? And I went, yeah. What time? Would you like to rehearse? Or So, and my first day on the set, all I did was perform that obscene act for 19 hours. My first day on the set, from 6 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock the next morning. Yep.
Really?
So, yeah, it was wonderful. It was absolutely. I mean. I had to put on weight. We met at a Weight Watchers meeting, so I put on 35 pounds to be on the show, and then it took forever there was no discipline. I just became wildly undisciplined, and then it took me years to get the weight off because again there was no discipline to it. So, but yeah, that was like one of the first big breaks from Howard. I feel like I should pull back a little bit just to give you the backstory for anybody who doesn't know this, that I mostly am known as a guy who does voices. I've always had an ability to do voices that I hear. because of how I grew up. And this is not a joke. This is a true story. Everybody in my family is deaf. My mom, my dad, and my sister are all completely deaf. So growing up in a deaf family, I couldn't learn how to talk from my family. I learned how to talk by watching TV, and I copied all the voices I heard on TV. So I've always had an ability to mimic voices that I hear, and that led to radio, which led to Howard Stern, which led to animation, Family Guy, American Dad, the Cleveland Show when that was on the air. But that's mainly what I'm known for, and that I got that ability because of circumstance, because of I couldn't. I had to pick up this. This unusual ability to mimic what I was hearing because I wasn't hearing it inside the home. So
That is so fascinating. So you grew up with American Sign? Is that how you would communicate to your parents and sister? And do you have any hearing issues yourself?
I don't. My dad was born with all of his hearing, and then he got in an accident when he was a kid, popped out his eardrums, so he had to go to deaf schools for the rest of his life, where he met my mom, and my mom was born completely deaf from a birth defect. And they fell in love, got married, and they had my sister first, and my sister's born with my mom's genes, completely deaf, and then I was born with my dad's genes with all my hearing.
Wow.
So I'm the only one in my family who can hear. And it is possible that if I was to have children, it could skip a generation. I could have a child that is deaf. But yeah, I never had any issues with hearing, aside from going to a lot of concerts and getting my eardrums blown out. But, so...
Wow.
So we talked to that because that's really fascinating for us, because on this show we talk about a lot of people who have like fallen over, got back up. But when you have a start like that, it can easily, because you started at a level of no hearing or so on and so forth, people can sort of almost go, well, this is me, this is the cards I've been dealt with, and I'll just stick at this sort of level, or I'm not going to sort of go off and achieve these amazing things that you did. But you, right from an early age, through circumstance, had the positivity to go through, or was it just because it was like, well, I didn't know any better, so therefore I went forward with how I was going to learn and mimic and things like that. So talk to the mindset and how have you had to do that further on in your career as well?
The circumstance you're born in is you don't know that it's a challenge. You just survive based on what you're dealt. Much like if you've ever seen videos of somebody that's been born with no arms, and they go on to be, adults with children, and they take care of their children with their feet, and everything they do in their house is they pick everything up with their feet. It's like you just adjust to what you have. So it was always, I noticed early on, people would say, wow, your whole family was deaf. Oh my God, that must have been so hard. And it's like, but the way you grew up is the way you grew up. You don't think anything about it. So
ultimately fascinates me is you became this incredible communicator, but from inside your family home, there wasn't this going on, the back and forth of conversation through voice. So it's amazing that your whole career trajectory has been in this huge amount of communication and the impressions as well, which I find really interesting, because I actually grew up in a family. My dad is a mimic. He mimics conversations he's had, people on TV. He just always did that, and it was hilarious to me. So when I talk to my dad, I do that. I do funny voices and impersonate the back and forth of different people in a conversation. And I pick up voices pretty easily. And I put that down to because I moved around a lot as a kid. I moved in England, where I grew up. There was lots of different dialects. You would move say an hour drive away from where you were, and they would have a totally different dialect. So I learned lots of different dialects growing up just because it was around me. But when I moved different schools, I started to talk like the other kids that were in the schools with totally different accents. And here now, nearly 20 years on living in New Zealand, people over in the UK would hear me and say I actually sound more Kiwi. I don't hear that, but people in the UK would probably say I sound Australian or something, because I wondered, what is it about me that becomes more of a chameleon to the environment I'm in? And I just was curious about that for you, for yourself. Impressions is just because you were listening to the way voice sounded to you from TV. And I'm just pondering on that, because for me, I wondered, is it because I'm trying to fit in? I'm trying to fit in with who I'm around. And is that a survival technique I picked up on, or from moving around a lot? So what do you think specifically about impressions from watching TV? Because not everyone can do impressions. It's a skill. Well, how do you think you became so good at it?
I think it is 100% trying to fit in. And I noticed that at a really young age and I would always tell people, like, when you call your best friend, back when there used to be one phone in a household, and you would call your best friend and somebody else would pick up the phone, and it could be somebody of the opposite sex in the same household, but they've all learned how to pick up the phone and go, hello, and do like that little nuanced thing. So, and you think you think it's your best friend and it's somebody else in the household. It's because they all picked up on these little nuances, which we all try to pick up on to just see if we can to fit in. And we all end up getting whatever our funny accents are, we do that to blend into our immediate surroundings, which is why deaf people sound the way that they do, because they can't hear anything. And so they'll make noise and they can't hear the person next to them to adjust their volume to the person next to them. So, and that's, I always say, and this is true, that growing up in a neighborhood, I grew up in Mount Vernon, which is right next to the Bronx. It's, everyone in my neighborhood sounded the same, which was true. I always say everybody in my neighborhood sounded like Tracy Morgan, that
Everybody in the Bronx talk like this, whether you black or white, male or female. It's crazy. Hey, this is the voice of your next door neighbor, and I'm a Vietnamese girl. That's crazy.
and it's true. You would see people of all races, all ages, with the same accent. It's like a comedian friend of mine, Tony Woods, who's a black comic from New York. Tony Woods has a great story about being picked up at a baggage claim at Heathrow Airport. And he said, this smooth-looking black guy came up to me and he said, "Are you Tony Woods?" And he said, I looked at him and went, "Stop doing that." Which is like, it's funny. Like, I did notice early on that we vocally are a product of our environments. And I always say, if you want to do an impression of somebody, listen to their parents or listen to their kids, because they're all kind of doing the same thing and they're kind of showing you how to do an impression of that person.
But one of the fascinating things for me, Craig, is that it is, as much as you say, if you ever want to learn how to do an impression, I feel like it's practice though, right? So you were learning these things off TV, but where did you get to practice? And what TV shows were you watching back then? And were you practicing on like other 5, 6, 7-year-olds, or teachers? Like how did that work?
I just did. I mean, when I was a kid, I would do impressions for my family that obviously involved no voices. It was just body language. And the body language would kill, which is,
First audience.
It's interesting because this, when I do impressions now, I always think of the person and then the voice just kind of comes out, Christopher Walken has that crazy look where he seems kind of off, or Adam Sandler, he won't, look you in the eye because he's nervous. And, or Al Pacino.
Well, just look right into your soul.
I always think of the body language before I actually do the voice, and I feel like the voice just kind of comes out with it. But But to answer your question, and I don't know if you'll be able to play this on TV, but it's true. When I was in high school, I always had a natural thing for doing voices. But in high school, when you start drinking and start, getting into recreational, experimenting and having fun.
Yeah.
I was in Tucson, Arizona, which is a desert. And there would be all these parties out in the desert. The kids would go out, like these teenagers would be out in the middle of the desert with a bonfire and a whole bunch of narcotics. And I remember going to these parties. I'm like 15, 16 years old. And my friends would say, hey, Craig, if we give you cocaine, will you do some impressions for us? And I went, yeah. And then I got really good at impressions. And I also developed a pretty bad cocaine habit, which I was able to work myself out of years later. But but that is really where the impressions got really good, because I started working on it more because I was being given drugs all the time to entertain my friends. So it's a sad answer, but a true story.
I feel like that's interesting, isn't it? To get rewarded. That's I think a very unique way of getting in, because a lot of people do open mics and don't get paid any money. But you were getting the most.
Yeah, it's funny because the way you just describe it as an experiment, I realize I was that mouse that they give the option of the cocaine to, and I just keep tapping. I keep tapping into the cocaine.
Science lab test. Yes. Yeah, I mean, but that's the dopamine. Exactly. And it would be probably that first taste of, this is really good. I'm getting people wanting me and wanting me to do the thing. Yeah. And you're uncensored. I'm imagining under cocaine, it's like you've got all the confidence to just do it and not feel a bit shy or reserved. So you're just going and not even holding back. And just going back to that whole getting into the persona of the person you're about to do an impression of, it's like you're shape-shifting. Just watching you here on the screen, you're shape-shifting between different people. That is so weird to watch for me just now, but it makes sense, because anytime I think of someone who I had a singing teacher at high school, and I used to always do her voice, but I'd always become her before I did the voice. So I totally hear you in, it's not just the vocal thing, but it's actually taking on all the mannerisms. So I really enjoyed you just demonstrating that shape-shifting skill. It's amazing. You were only 15, so you were starting pretty early in the experimental drug scene. And so you said you were able to get yourself back out of that. So talk us through that whole time, because that's young, and I want to know all about that time.
I guess I was 15. I was 14 when I started drinking and smoking pot. And then I guess it was 15 when I first started doing cocaine. And I honestly just remember at 15 thinking, I remember that first time I did it, I looked at my friend and I was like, I know a lot of people say bad things about cocaine, but they never talk about how good it is, because this is amazing. Like cocaine, honestly, especially living in Tucson, where we were an hour away from the Mexican border, where it was really cheap. It was very cheap and also very pure. Yeah. I would almost recommend it if it didn't ruin your life. Like, it was so good that I would almost recommend it to a teenager, because your body can really handle it. And I just, like everybody else, I ended up going on this ride that anybody who finds themselves addicted to any kind of a substance, it was a traditional thing where I just kept trying to find the magical euphoria of that first time. And I was never able to quite get it again, maybe in like little snippets here and there. And then the euphoric part of the ride was getting shorter and shorter. And then the back end, which became a real paranoia and negative, it was weird, the negative thoughts that I had about myself at the end of using coke for a run of a day or two or whatever, that was not natural for me. I'm a very optimistic and positive person, and coke would bring out a depression that never existed in me, or a feeling of low self-worth that I had never had before. And I can remember at the time thinking at 16, 17, 18 years old, where I was just exhausting myself with cocaine and just thinking, how am I going to get to the cool part of my life when I'm so stuck right now? Yeah. But I was very self-conscious that my life was going to get better. I didn't know how to get out of my own way. And it ended up being a heart attack which I had a heart attack at the age of 32. And then that scared me straight for about a year. And then I got in a really toxic relationship that I ended up relapsing on New Year's Eve here in Vegas, actually, on New Year's Eve 2002 going into 2003. No, wait, it was 2003 going into 2004. And I relapsed. And like anybody else who tries to stay sober, when you relapse, you're so much worse than you were, because that addictive side of you grows while you're sober, even if you're not participating in the thing that you're addicted to. So when I went back, I was so much worse, and I was just spiraling, and I couldn't get back on. And then on the 2-year anniversary of my heart attack, I had a moment of clarity. I had a half a beer in my hand, and I just realized, wow, my life is good. I'm taking care of my mom now. I ended up taking care of my mom for the last 20 plus years that she was. I didn't physically take care of her, but I financially took care of my mom for the last 20 years that she was alive. And at the time, I'm circling around opportunities where I could literally take care of her for the rest of her life. Why am I doing this? Why am I? And then I just realized the answer was, I am selfish. I'm just a selfish person. And the only reason I drink and do drugs is because I think, despite what everybody's telling me, I think I feel great. And it's a hard pill to swallow, to realize this doesn't serve me any purpose, and my ego is the problem. And then I had half a beer in my hand, and I hovered it over a garbage can, and I dropped it. I remember as it dropped, I remember going, oh, because it was half a beer going into the garbage can. I was like, and then I never drank again, never did drugs again. Drinking wasn't really an issue for me, but every time I drank, I kept going to the thing that was an issue, which was cocaine. So that is also a tough thing for people to admit to themselves, is that in order for me to stop doing this thing, I have to stop doing everything that alters me and puts me on that path to going to that thing.
So going through that timeline then, so 32 up until 32, what's the timeline of the opportunities? Because when the stand-up element to it, Howard Stern, and the other opportunities, what was the timeline, and where did that all fit in, and were you functioning on it, or was it as soon as you gave it up, that's when all the good things happened?
Yeah, I'm drinking as a teenager, and I started doing stand-up when I'm 23. Well, and this is my inspirational story, is that I tried to do stand-up at the age of 20, and I failed. Right. And which is an incredible story. But then I got into it later when I was 23, and I never went on stage without having at least a beer or two to get on stage. And I knew that Coke wasn't helpful at all. So I would only do Coke. If it was a night of a comedy show, I would only do Coke after the show. So, but drinking was just part of the culture that I was in. So, so that's 23. I start doing stand-up. 25, I start performing on the Howard Stern show, doing like funny celebrity phone calls and stuff, like calling in as different celebrities saying awful things. And then at the age of 28, I start writing for Howard. So I thought maybe I should go back to New York. I was living in Seattle at that point, but I'm from New York. So I packed my stuff up and I moved back to New York. I moved in with another comedian named Mitch Hedberg, who is this incredible comedian.
I play tennis in LA. I live in Los Angeles. I play tennis with my friend Doug. The thing that's depressing about tennis is no matter how good I get, I'll never be as good as a wall.
And then I started writing for Howard. I started writing for Weekend Update at Saturday Night Live. And then a couple years after that, at the age of 31, is when all the doors opened for me, when I started sitting next to Howard Stern. And I got on all these TV shows. And at 32, when I had the heart attack, I was in the midst of a burgeoning television career. I got King of Queens at that point. I think Sex and the City had already happened. Doing some shows out of New York, like Law and Order. And then the heart attack. It's weird. I never laid those two on top of each other. My addictions with the career. I just know that comedy's always been there for me. Mm-hmm. So I've never thought about that timeline. And then when I quit, and I've been sober now 21 years, everything just got better creatively for me, and I became a much, much better comedian.
And imagine as well that culture is feeding the addiction as well. As you say, it's in the culture of having a beer or two at a comedy club. And I imagine after you're kind of around a lot of substance as well. So high stakes in feeding that addiction.
When I was living with Mitch, he never was into what became his biggest fall in life, which was heroin. I when we lived together, we would drink. He would smoke pot sometimes, and every once in a while, I think on a couple of occasions, we did coke together. But he was a pretty mellow guy, not like a big heavy drug user, until he signed a deal with I don't know if it was Fox or ABC. He signed some kind of deal where he got $1 million up front to just kind of, while they figured out what they were going to do with him. And that is when he moved out of the apartment and into the Chelsea Hotel, which is a legendary hotel in New York that a lot of famous poets and writers used to live at. Sid Vicious famously killed Nancy in that hotel. And that's when I started hearing stories about him going off the deep end with heroin. I never saw it. I saw him once before, it must have been a few months before he passed away. I saw him on Sunset Boulevard in front of the Comedy Store. And it was a strangely foggy night. The fog was on the ground on Sunset Boulevard. I was at a concert at the House of Blues, which used to be directly across the street from the Comedy Store. And it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning. I came out of the House of Blues, and I saw Mitch all alone on Sunset in front of the Comedy Store. There was nobody around. There was a low fog. And I go, "Hey, Mitch." And he said, "Hey, man, it's good to see you." And I said, "Good to see you too, man. Are you doing okay?" And he said, "Oh yeah, man, I'm doing fine. How are you?" And I said, "I'm doing all right. You sure you're doing okay?" And then he just kind of changed the subject, and I was like, "All right." And then I think I'd just gotten sober, and Mitch ended up being the first of 7 friends of mine who died in that first year that I stopped doing drugs. Wow. And they were all comedians. 4 drug overdoses and 3 drinking and driving car accidents all happened in the first year that I was sober. And every one of those deaths, sadly, were inspirations for me to keep going, because I knew that your brain, when you're addicted to something and you don't do it for a while, your brain will start to tell you, it's not all bad. Like, you can do this. Like, you just gotta not do it so much. And you'll start to think, yeah, maybe I just need to not do it so much. And then you can't. You're just not wired that way. There are people who cannot stop drinking once they start having one drink. And I understand that. And I was absolutely hardwired the same way when it came to drugs. I no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much damage it was doing to my life, I kept going. And then you get sober, and then you still have those intrusive thoughts because your brain is broken. Your brain is telling you the wrong thing. It's like anyone who's morbidly obese, their brain is telling them this is okay to keep eating all these bad foods at such a large volume, but your brain's not working. And those 7 deaths helped keep me on the right path, and to know that I could never turn back. It does, talking about the brain being broken, there's an incredible documentary on Netflix that came out, I think 2 years ago, The Man Who Wants to Live Forever or something like that. And it's a guy who's trying to see if he can outlive all the, like, he wants to live until 150 if he can, and he's spending millions and millions of dollars on everything that he could possibly buy to help him with his health. And he says in the documentary that the biggest change was realizing, okay, my brain is telling me, ooh, I want to eat that, or ooh, it would feel good to do that. But what would my organs in my body tell me if my organs could talk? If all the other organs in my body besides my brain could tell me, ooh, I need this right now, what would it say? And that's how he started changing his diet and started changing and drifting into a better exercise regimen, because he started thinking about what would all the organs in my body be telling me. My brain's telling me to eat a cake and have some ice cream. But what would the rest of my organs say to me if they could send me messages? So
I'm picturing you there dropping that half-drunk beer into the garbage can, as you said. And that was the main decision. Right, I'm doing it now. I'm becoming sober. What were the steps, though? I'm imagining you don't just go, I'm going to stop taking drugs. Did you go to AA? Did you join support groups? Did you find someone to help you through it? What did you do? What were the steps to become sober that, say if someone at home was making that decision tonight with their half-drunk beer, what steps followed that helped you stay sober?
Oh my God, if you want to get sober right now, if everything that I'm saying is resonating with you, and if you're identifying with what I'm talking about not being able to control your ability to stop doing something, you can not only go to get help right now, you can actually find Zoom meetings going on 24 hours a day online. You can go AA, CA for Cocaine Anonymous, NA for Narcotics Anonymous, and you can join a group of people right now on Zoom who are going through what you're going through and are recovering at different levels. And if you're like me, you will hear things that you won't need explained to you. You'll hear phrases that you'll go, oh, wow, I really identify with that. And so if you need help, it comes down to, you have to love yourself enough to want to get help and to admit that this is a problem and that you need to make a change. And then once you're able to admit that, and if you can admit that in a group setting, it's all uphill from there. And that has literally been the dividing line between people who lived in my life and people who died, are the people who admitted, okay, I am flawed. I am not capable of maintaining whenever this substance is around. I need help. And then the people whose ego gets in the way and fears admitting that they're flawed. And those are the people who tend to die, are the people who won't just be honest with themselves and admit that this is an issue. So that is, 12-step programs I have found are the best way to live a healthier life. If you commit yourself to it, it doesn't work you. You have to work it. You have to put effort in and follow their suggestions and And that will absolutely get you healthy and sober. If you really are in a bad way and you know that you have a problem, you can check in once a day. It's recommended that you do 90 meetings in 90 days to really, and if you do that, oh man, your whole mindset your brain will rewire. Awesome. And that's what you need. You don't become a bad drug addict or an alcoholic overnight. It starts, teenage years, there's an experience that you have. You're like, wow, that was fun. Or, oh my God, that was exhilarating. Or, oh my God, I almost died. And they start to pepper your life. And then you just end up on a track that you're on it for so long. You don't really know how you got to the spot. You just know that it's taken over your life. And the only way back is to do it like one step at a time. And you have to kind of peel the layers of the onion back to kind of figure out how you ended up in this spot in the first place. It doesn't happen overnight, but with time, and even years later, you'll have epiphanies where you go, oh my God, I didn't even realize something about myself that I just realized just now.
Yeah, it's great. So, and now that you've, and that's really helpful. Thank you so much. I didn't even know that was an option with the 24/7 scenario. So that's really great help. So we obviously now sober. I've been very lucky enough to open for you a few times, Craig, when you've toured New Zealand and just hang out. And I've been privileged to have the Craig Gass experience of Craig Gass's amazing stories. And I kind of want to get our listeners and our viewership to sort of get a few Craig's stories. I just recently saw on your Facebook profile that you were just hanging out with like Will Ferrell and Paul McCartney and all these different famous people. Mm-hmm. But your Facebook feed and Instagram feed is full of just ridiculous encounters with all these celebrities.
And not just like, oh, I think I recognize that person. It's like Hollywood A-listers. Yeah. I was looking as well, scrolling on Instagram. Paul Rudd, Jack Black, the list of people that you know or are connected to or meet on a daily basis seems outrageous to me. How do you sit at the table with all these famous people? Do you ever feel like, I'm starstruck, I don't know what to say to you? Like, who's the most famous person you've met that you've gone, oh my God, I need your autograph?
I think that from the time I was a teenager, when I started meeting people, I think I just kept learning lessons as it happened more and more, that I would just realize, oh, that's not the way to talk to somebody. I have to kind of push them away, and then once I started doing stand-up, at that point, I'd become more and more comfortable being around people who I admired. And also this weird thing happened. I had pursued music for years and years and years. I started booking and promoting concerts, like local shows, from the time I was 15 until I was 23. And I made a ton of friends in the music industry. And when I started doing stand-up when I was 23, my friends in the music industry, I would give them VHS tapes of my stand-up, and they would put them on tour buses all over the country. And once I started to hit with the Howard Stern show, I would get phone calls from people going, hey man, I'm on tour with Aerosmith, and the guys in the band were talking about you in catering. And I said, that's my friend Craig. I know him. And they'd say, well, bring him to a show. And so Aerosmith wants to meet you when we get to New York. Is it okay to? And I'm like, fuck yeah, like absolutely. Yeah. So I started having these. It just kept snowballing. But it started when I was a teenager, and I always find that it's easier for me to just talk about stand-up than it is to talk about why I admire you so much. Yeah. And I like in this town, there's this buddy of mine who's a personal security guy, and he was Slash's bodyguard for like 10, 15 years. Now he's finally off the road and he's got a gig. He just lives in Vegas, and he's Chris Angel's personal security. Chris Angel, the magician who does a big residency here in Vegas. And I remember him telling me when he was working with Slash that Slash liked to meet people and get to know people, but he wanted to talk to them about things that he was interested in about them. But the moment that they would go, dude, I gotta tell you, man, first time I saw Sweet Child of Mine, like he just turns off and then like the conversation's over and then he just kind of wants to walk away because he's had that conversation a billion times with people. So somewhere along the way, I think I just, through trial and error, I realized, oh, you know what, let's talk about something that I'm comfortable talking about, which is stand-up. And if you tell me who your favorite stand-up comedian is, chances are I not only know them, but I probably have a great story about them for you. So, but yes, I have definitely found myself in some crazy situations, though. You know, the Paul McCartney thing was I mean, I didn't know Paul was going to show up.
Paul McCartney and Steven Spielberg sat right in front of me.
It was, I was at an SNL party for their season end rap party, and it's on a big skating rink is where the party is at 30 Rockefeller, which is where NBC, Saturday Night Live is at. And so it's all closed off to the public, and there's tables. They have they put out a covering for the ice skating rink, and they put tables out. But there's an outside perimeter that was less crowded. There was actually a table right in front of a glass window. So I just sat at this table, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's a cue card guy for Saturday Night Live. And there's a table, some chairs right here in front of me, and they were empty. And while we were talking, I saw people walking towards me, and I looked up, and it was Paul McCartney and Steven Spielberg. And I went, and I just reached for my camera, and I just start like, it was like, I'm never going to be this close to Paul McCartney. This is absolutely insane. So that's a bizarre moment. And I won't ever say who the person is in my Instagram. I'll just say whatever. I mean, because you know what you're looking at when I post these stories of who's at my shows and who I'm hanging out with. You know who they are, so I won't say anything about who they are. It's you know, like I remember being in San Francisco and just doing a live thing on Instagram, and I said local San Francisco band rehearsing a song about puppets. Hashtag not bad. And people joined the live stream and they're like, what is Metallica's? You're at a Metallica rehearsal? And it's like, you know, so I don't, it feels like if I spell it out, then I look like I'm trying to show off. And I'm genuinely just trying to capture the situations I'm in without sounding like I think I'm cool. You know, but I do know I'm in some weird situations. So
remarkable
whether it's being on the
moments.
field of, whether it's being on the field of the Super Bowl with my favorite team when they won the Super Bowl, or living at Eddie Van Halen's house, or being on stage with, bringing Nick on stage with Pearl Jam. It's like I love documenting all those things.
Now, we just glossed over it, didn't we? Taking Nick on the stage at Pearl Jam. Can we go to that moment? Because Nick had ticket, I think, to go with friends, and then something very, very exciting happened for Nick here. So tell us that moment.
So I was already going, me and my mates, massive Pearl Jam. So Pearl Jam as a band for me, Pearl Jam and Weezer are two bands that sort of galvanize me and my friends together. You know, we all have like a band that in our younger teenage or early 20s or something like that, that you just sort of all rally around and the music captures you and you just sort of
connects you.
Yeah, and it's sort of that coming of age soundtrack, I guess you would say. And Pearl Jam and Weezer was that for myself. And me and my friends from college, so high school, which would be in America, we all, like maybe a year out, bought Pearl Jam tickets when they came to New Zealand. It was this big reunion. A lot of us hadn't seen each other for like 22 years, something like that. And so I was already going, and I was in like the Golden Circle or whatever. And then I get I think a text message on the day saying, from you, Craig, I didn't even know you were in town. And you were just like, hey, I'm in town. Are you in Auckland by any chance? And I said, yeah. And then I was like, I just said to you, how are you? How's it all going? And then you were just going, oh, you know, great, I'm just in town. Like you said and just said now, you didn't allude why you're in town. And you just sort of said, hey, you don't happen to be a fan of Pearl Jam, do you? And then so I'll let you take away from that, from how you know the Pearl Jam guys and versus what the heck you were doing all of a sudden in town. Because you also opened for you also open for big bands as well, doing comedy. Talk to the Pearl Jam thing, but also I wanted to hear your opening for bands as well.
I don't open for bands in any way that is respectable. I will go on stage and lie and say, my name's Craig, I'm the band's tour manager.
Yeah.
So, it gets people to listen. So I'll tell you, Mike McCready ended up, it started with, the Pearl Jam story starts about 20 years ago. A friend of mine in Seattle invited me to a basketball game and said, I have some friends who are fans of yours. They want to meet you. And would it be okay if we all go to a Seattle Sonics game? Great. So I go to the game and I meet these guys, and I saw one of them had a leather jacket on that had a pin of Gene Simmons on the pin, which is a guy that I do an impression of that's bothered Gene Simmons so much that Gene Simmons actually got on a plane and he flew to New York to confront me live on the air about my impression of him. So I'm hanging out with these guys and I'm telling them stories about, like, that Gene Simmons and I have like a history, and they go, oh yeah, we're huge Kiss fans. And I go, oh man, let me tell you some stories about Gene. So I'm telling them stories about Gene Simmons, and we're all laughing, and they're really nice guys. They're local musicians, and I said, well, if I live in New York, and I literally work with the greatest comedians in the world in New York. So if any of you guys are ever in New York, let me know. I'll bring you out to a show. And then one of the guys in that group said, oh, I'm actually going to be in New York in a couple months, actually. And then he turns to his friends and say, yeah, we just booked Saturday Night Live. We're going to be on Saturday Night Live in April. And I went, you're going to be on Saturday Night Live? And he goes, yeah. And I go, like, doing what? And he goes, I'm playing with my band. And I go, oh my God, this is Mike McCready. This is the guitarist of Pearl Jam. And that's when it hit me like, holy shit. And I go, wow, well, yeah. And he goes, yeah, let's exchange phone numbers. So we exchanged phone numbers. And I had to leave the game early because I had a bar gig in this small town that was going to help pay for my plane ticket for the trip to Seattle. And I started leaving the venue when Mike followed me up and he said, hey, so where's your gig tonight? I want to come see you. And I go, don't do that. It's a bar gig. I don't want you at a bar gig. I go, come to a show when I do a real show at a comedy club. I do not want you at a bar gig. And he goes, okay. So we exchanged phone numbers. And then it was like a year later, I got booked to do the roast of Gene Simmons. And I texted Mike and said, are you going to be in Los Angeles around this date? Because I'm doing a roast of Gene Simmons with a bunch of great comedians. And Mike said, I'm not supposed to be in LA, but I will buy a plane ticket and I will fly down there to watch you do the roast of Gene Simmons. Wow. So he bought a plane ticket for him and his friend Rick, who he grew up with, and they flew down to Los Angeles to be in the audience for me. And that, if you watch the roast of Gene Simmons, the audience is made up of musician friends of mine. It's I was so proud of my guest list. Like, I had guys from Sugar Ray, Alice in Chains, System of Pearl Jam, Wu-Tang Clan, who I actually don't know the Wu-Tang Clan, but I met them through one of the guys from System of a Down. And it was all these musicians came out to support me there at that roast, which was an incredible, it was such a good feeling. And then over the years, we just had this friendship that I filmed a comedy special called The Worst Comedy Show Ever that I had Mike do an appearance on. And Mike shows up at the comedy show to show me how much better his life is than mine. It plays off very well. So,
Craig, hey, what's happening?
How are you,
what's
man?
Going on? Holy shit, I'm on camera right now. How are you? I'm Craig.
Hey, I'm Dan.
Do you mind being on camera? Mike McCready, everybody. Mike McCready.
No.
What's your name? Dan?
Dan.
Dan, this is Count.
Pleasure
Dan.
to meet you.
Mike McCready,
Big fan.
musician
Nice
friend of
to meet
mine. He's a local guy who that's Sung. Sung's my he's my body double. But it's a long story. But I'm glad you guys made it. So where were you guys at? Were you guys together?
I went over to Europe with Mike.
Yeah, just got off the plane. It was
Europe.
amazing, man.
Yeah.
London, 80,000 screaming fans.
Really?
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I'm here for you, my friend.
Good. I'm glad you made it.
So where are you playing tonight?
Where am I playing? This is it. You made it. This is my gig.
Seriously, where are you playing at?
This is my gig. I'm actually doing the show right here. This is it. I wanted to film in here because remember I told you the whole concept was I was going to film it in a small bar. This is it.
Yeah. We've been friends for close to 20 years now, and he's just a nice guy. He's such a nice guy that he's rewired how I approach many things in my life, including how I talk to people. He's just, I feel like people reveal themselves with the words that they use, and his language is so selfless. I was with him once when he had an assistant right next to him. And he's telling me a story about something, and he's like, "Oh, I need to grab this thing." And he looks at his assistant and he says, "Hey, do you mind doing me a quick favor?" And I was like, you're paying that guy to be your assistant, and you're asking him, "Do you mind?" And it's just, it'll be really quick. "Do you mind doing a quick thing for me?" And I'm like, that guy is working for you. And that's a great example of the kind of language that he uses that made me rethink how I talk to people. So,
well, I would even go another step forward as well with that, because that day that we were on and where you got me back in Pearl Jam, when you gave me that text message to say, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, he goes, "Are you?" And then Craig goes, "Are you a Pearl Jam fan by any chance?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Do you want to go to the concert?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually already going." And I was like, "Oh, this would be a great opportunity for me to catch up with Craig because he's in town and, whatever." And I just thought that you were going to be in the crowd with me. And I was like, okay, I don't know how we're going to work this out. Anyway, long story short, he then goes, "Come meet me at the barricade at the front." And I had golden tickets because we'd bought tickets ages ago. And so we went down to the front. And then he goes, "Come," and I think Pearl Jam had already started. And there were like 3 songs in. He goes, "Come meet me down the front." And I was like, "Oh, it's not the best timing, Craig," And then you go, "Come, do you want to go for a drink?" And I was like, "Not really, Craig. I want to watch the band."
Show.
And then you go, "No, just come with me." And we start walking up. And I'm like going, this is the worst because I've waited the whole entire year. I'm here with my buddies. And then he goes, "Just put this on." And he puts his lanyard on me. And then I somehow... we go up to this bouncer. Craig does this, official nod. And then all of a sudden, I think within about 90 seconds, I go from being with my friends at the third song into Pearl Jam into being in Pearl Jam's green room with the friends and family. And he's offering me a water and some chips and some crisps and so on and so forth. And it's so crazy, that story. And I'll let you take over from there.
Well, I just remember bringing you on stage, and then didn't Mike come over and talk to us during the show and just hang out with us for a while? like in the middle of the show in a stadium. It's a stadium completely sold out. Yeah. And Mike comes over and I go, "This is Nick." I go, "This is my buddy. He's a comedian from here." And he's like, "Oh, hey, Nick." And they start talking, and then and Mike's got a guitar around, and we start making jokes, and it's always the same awful jokes. And then didn't he say, "Oh, hey, I got to go back to work"? Didn't he say that?
Well, he did.
And then he walked back on.
Yeah, he did say that. And then the other amazing thing is that when we were chatting side of stage, and I think that's that learning that you had learnt many years ago of how to talk to people that you are impressed by, is we were just talking about comedy. And then at one stage, we were talking about performance, and then he tapped me on the shoulder, and he was talking about, because he was literally performing to 40,000 people, 45,000 people. We were side of stage, and he taps us both, and we were talking about performance, and then he goes to you and me, taps me on the shoulder and goes, "But you guys know what it's like." And
these arenas, you know that feeling of an arena.
And then he goes out and he plays the solo to Yellow Ledbetter or something amazing like that.
Oh yeah.
Then and then in the middle of one of the songs, he runs off stage, and everyone's thinking, "Oh, I must have just gone to the toilet." But what happened is he came back up from backstage, got 4 bottles of water, gave it to us all at side stage and goes, "Here guys, I just noticed you guys didn't have any water, so I went back and got some water." And then he went back out and played the song. That is Mike McCready in a nutshell. The whole time he could not be set in his own mind playing that concert, not knowing that we weren't looked after.
You were down here.
It was like we're at his house.
Oh.
Yeah, he that is absolutely the kind of human being he is, and it's he's a very disarming person, and it's just funny. I love doing that for people. I love surprising people with cool stuff and saying, "Hey, do you like blah blah blah? Okay, well, do you want to go?" And then not tell them anything, and then just like throw them in the middle of something crazy, and then watch them go, "What the fuck? Like, what is going on?" Like,
where does that come from, Craig? Where does that come from? That surprise and delight. Yeah. Where do you think that's come from?
I think it's this is going to sound like a bizarre response to that question. But I think it's because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is such a bad person for planet Earth that I have thought for, like, when he first showed up, he was so destructive and was such a negative life force that I thought, oh my God, this whole world could end at any moment. Like, this guy could really be the source of total and complete destruction in the world, like at the drop of a hat. So I need to live my life like I'm going to die. And then it hit me that I had been living my life like I was going to die. I've been booking all my comedy shows around the world, around concerts and sporting events, and just having this incredible, fun life. And then I thought, well, you know what I could do is I could bring people in who love these things and show them these incredible experiences of being on the field with their favorite team or being on stage with their favorite bands. With all these incredible friends that I made over the years, how great would it be to share these experiences with people? So that's where that thing came from, of like wanting other people to experience the joy of these rare moments in life. So that's
amazing. Hey,
that's it, man.
Craig, we could honestly talk to you for an hour and hours and hours and hours. Now, the whole purpose of getting you on again is because I'm so inspired, and I remember chatting to Soph about this and other friends as well about your journey, and I admire you about that. You go out there and you like book shows because there is a sporting event or there is a band, and you sort of manifest is the wrong word, but I think you create and build your own life.
Master builder for your own life.
You're the master builder of your own life, and you've gone through these ups and downs. You've gone through lows. You've had bad starts. You've had things that have fallen over. You've had peaks. You've had troughs. This whole show is about standing up again and giving that person that one last try, or that one, if you fall over 8 times, get up 9. But what happens if you fall over 10? We want to go... You know, if there's any advice that you could give to somebody who is in a funk, who is about to give up, who is about to cash in the dream, what would you say? What's helped you along the way?
Well, can I tell you how I ended up learning that lesson myself?
Yes, please.
It is my whole life I've been told by my friends that I was funny and that I should be a comedian. I've been told that my whole life. I always looked at comedians as being these superior beings that, you know, I mean, I love music, but to be alone on a stage with a microphone and to control an entire theater or arena of people with your thoughts, I just thought, like, wow, I admired it so much, but I never thought I could do it. But I went to an open mic when I was 20 years old. I wasn't even old enough to get into the club. You had to be 21 to get into the club. So I snuck in, I signed up for an open mic, and I invited 30 of my friends to come watch me. And I did not know that comedians prepared material. It looks like you're just talking up there. And I thought, oh, well, I can do that. And so I had no material planned. I remember even the guy who owned the club, he said, is this your first time? I said, yeah. And he goes, all right, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I go, dude, give me like 20. I could I can talk, man. Like, you know, and then you walk up on stage and I had no idea how bright the lights were. I had no idea how loud the microphone was, and I had never felt the pressure of a quiet room just staring at you like just wanting you to make them laugh. And in one fell swoop, in one moment, it was just like I made one joke about how nervous I was because I couldn't see anything, and then I paused and I said, I can't do this. And my hands were shaking so bad, I couldn't even get the mic back into the stand. And the MC had to come back and help me. And the MC was the only guy who made a joke, like an actual recognizable joke. He came up on stage and he said, all right, ladies and gentlemen, Craig Gass, everybody. If you want to see the second half of his show, come back to the 9 p.m. performance and watch him do the second half of the show. And he made a joke about it. And then everybody else that went up at the open mic, though, used me as a target without even jokes. Right. Just saying, like, man, that guy sucked. Like, are you here? Is that guy still here? That was you? Dude, why are you here, man? Dude, you're so not funny. And I was like, whoa. So it hurt to be in a professional situation that was related to what I've been told my whole life is the most natural part of my personality, and I couldn't pull it off in a professional situation. It really hurt me, even like socially. Like having walked off stage saying I can't do this, I would be at weddings of friends and I'd stand up and go, hey, I just want to say a few words because I've known the two of you for a long time. And someone in the back of the room would go, I can't do this. And I was like, what? Like, yeah. So friends of mine would heckle me with that. And then after like 3 years of that dark feeling that I tried to suppress, of that embarrassment, there was I was managing bands. I'm managing local bands, and this one band, I brought them into a local radio station to have them promote a gig that was coming up. And as soon as the on-air light came on, all the guys in the band got quiet. And I started taking over the conversation. I started doing impressions and being funny and yelling and screaming, whatever. And then after the interview, the DJ said, how many impressions can you do? And I said, I don't know. I have no idea. I just, I do a lot. And he said, if I put you in the studio, will you record those impressions and just say, hey, you're listening to KLPX? And I'm like, sure. And he put me in a studio and I talked to myself for an hour in that room, just as different voices. And then he pulls me out and he's like, oh, thanks for doing that. And then we exchanged phone numbers. And like a week later, he calls me up. I'm 23 years old. I'm still living with my mom. He calls up. I pick up the phone. And he goes, hey, what are you doing? And I go, nothing, just hanging out. And what are you doing? And he said, I'm at work. I go, oh, you're at the radio station right now? And he goes, yeah, hold on. I want you to hear something. And I hear the end of a song, and I heard my voice doing an impression saying, you're listening to KLP. And it was me as Sam Kinison. And so I hear that, and I go, was that on the air? And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh, dude, I could have taped that. And he said, hold on. And he started taking phone calls, and he said, KLPX. And the first call was, hey, man, dude, was that Sam Kinison? Because didn't he die a couple years ago? And he goes, yeah, man, that's actually my friend. It's my buddy, Craig Gass. You're on the phone with him. And I'm like, oh, no way, dude, that was so good. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. And then he took another phone call, KLPX. Yeah, I have a question. That thing you just played, was that Sam Kinison? Because like that sounded new. And he's like, well, it was actually my friend Craig Gass. And like, oh, dude, wow, man, you're really good. Like, oh, thanks. And he took a couple phone calls. And then he said, hey, man, I don't know what you're planning on doing with your life, but I have to tell you, like, if I play a song and I get 2 or 3 phone calls about the song, that's a hit song.
Right.
Every time I play one of your impressions, always get a few phone calls.
Wow.
And I don't know what you're planning on doing with your life, but I really think you should be a stand-up comedian. And I went, oh, I tried that once, dude. And I told him the story I just told you, and I said, it did not go well. And he said, well, you have to understand, you're very natural for this. So you need to go back into that club, and before you get on stage, you need to say to yourself, I'm funny and I belong here. And I actually did that. I got in the club, I went back for an open mic, and before I went on stage, I went, I'm funny. I belong here. I'm funny and I belong here. And I went on stage. I couldn't believe how easy it was. It was the easy. Not only was it easy, it was like, oh, dude, I could do this. I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it.
Yeah.
I was like, I could totally do this. Is so easy. As long as I prepare, I can totally do this. And then I started to get into it. And then I moved to Seattle. This was in Tucson. I moved to Seattle and I started doing stand-up. And I had a bad chip on my shoulder because I wanted revenge. I wanted revenge from every one of those open micers who were bullies. Yeah. And they bullied me that night and mocked me for trying. And I started going after any comedian who reminded me of those bullies. And it worked. Within like 6 months, I got banned from every major comedy club in the Pacific Northwest except for 2. And George Carlin came out of the woodwork and became my mentor. And I had a relationship with George Carlin that he became a father figure to me. And then Howard Stern got involved in my life. And then Howard started putting me on his show. And then it slowly started to become something. And I'm still as in love with stand-up comedy now as I've ever been. And I just cannot stress enough. If you love something that much, you have to go for it. You will not believe how many comedians I know who have created opportunities for themselves just because they try. They absolutely push and they just try. It is shocking how easy it can be sometimes to get to that final destination. It is shocking. The biggest difference between the people who made it to TV and incredible opportunities and the people who didn't, honest to God, is the people who just persisted and just kept pushing at it. You will find yourself in a place that you will be shocked to get to. So, again, if you're a teenager, cocaine can be incredibly...
We're going to have a disclaimer at the bottom of the screen.
Experience.
We do not endorse cocaine. Craig, that was beautiful. You know, Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, that is exactly what I was seeing. The archetype, you were slaying the dragon in that comeback in stand-up comedy. And it was, you know, we were joking before about having a podcast where people start to cry as guests. The host here is starting to cry and get emotional hearing that amazing comeback story from that. And I think that will resonate not just with future budding stand-up comics, but actually so many people across all different industries. That was so inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to get through this. On my end, there was some really tough connection issues here. So
no, you did amazing. Craig, thank you so much for coming on. So that was Craig Gass. What did you think?
I love him.
Yeah.
I know you've talked about him a lot in the past when you've done gigs or caught up with him, and he is as funny as you said, and I'm so glad he took the time to talk to us. It felt weird as well for us to do it remotely because often a guest is sitting opposite us, but I felt so connected to all his stories. His funny impressions had me howling.
So we met, I think, I don't know if we were going out. I think we were going out potentially. Maybe we were boyfriend and girlfriend.
Early days.
Very early days. But I went on tour with him and it was a horrendous tour in New Zealand.
Horrendous as in...
Well, bad. Like he was this massive guy, been on all these TV shows, voice of Family Guy, and the booker that booked him at that particular time didn't really promote him as much. I think we had one show which sold out, and the rest was like, we had 9 people. We performed to 9 people in a fish market.
Oh my gosh.
In Auckland.
And you're like, welcome to New Zealand.
Yeah. And so we kind of bonded over this thing. And then we were at he got us into U2 were playing, and Jay-Z was opening for U2. And he goes, do you want to go to U2? And I was like, okay, I'll go to U2. And then the booker, the manager, I was sitting in the middle, then Craig was to the right of me, and the booker was to the left, and they had this argument over pay because he hadn't paid him yet, and it didn't look like he was going to get paid. And so they had the screaming match across from me as Jay-Z was playing 99 Problems.
I mean, that's one way to watch it.
Yeah, and so so we sort of bonded over that, and then we just kept in touch over the years, and
yeah. So wow, like to have, when I was just thinking, like, he stands in front of a microphone and he performs impressions, stand-up comedy bits.
Yes.
He is the ultimate communicator, making people laugh. But like, imagine your home environment growing up is quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's where his love of heavy metal music came, because he could play it as loud as he wants without his parents going, turn it off, turn it down. Like I can't imagine every parent would be encouraging of heavy metal.
Well, I like the attitude of you're just in it. There's no, because sometimes we label things as a good start.
A good,
or
bad
hard
start.
Hard. Yeah. How did you get through this? But when you label it as it just is, and we have to move on, that's it. That's all you got to do.
It's all I knew. Yeah.
And so when something happens to you at a young age or even at an older age, if something happens to you, it just is. And so let's move forward with this.
And what a way to develop skills in communication, from not being able to practice as often. You do hear your parents talking and you practice speech through picking up words and inflection and tone and the nuances, as he said. But to have it from all different celebrities on the TV or in shows or movies, that's how he was kind of practicing speech.
Well, that's when you are learning from that. When you're at home with your parents or your caregivers or your brothers or sisters, no one's really animated. No one's really giving it 100% performance.
Yeah.
But as on a TV, people are, especially back in the day in TV, they were performing. They were funny. They were the best of the best. They were the ultimate communicators. That's why they were on television. And you're learning from that. And so that's when he goes into his impressions and he embodies the impression, and he really did shapeshift into it.
Did.
So when he does his Adam Sandler, you're like, oh, that's Adam Sandler.
That was so good.
Yeah.
I actually just now want to just go and watch all his bits on YouTube, and hopefully when he comes back next to New Zealand, we can go and watch, because I love impressionists actually.
Yeah.
As I said, my dad does impressions all the time. Me and my dad communicate in that way. And
well, even if you look on the story about him talking about the Howard Stern, when he slips into the producer's voice, if you type in Howard Stern's producer and marry up the impression, that's exactly how the producer sounded. So even little impressions that you don't know are famous, then he kind of nails those. So but I think the biggest learning for me and the biggest takeaway from that is, don't label something, it just is. And also the other thing of, when you have that fallback and you have that horrendous 3 years of like shameful humiliation. I don't want to get back up there.
Yeah.
But then when something tells you, or somebody literally tells you,
really validating from a very, impressionable person, say someone at this radio station who he obviously admired, who would know what he's talking about.
Yes.
That led him to go, all right. And to have the mindset shift with the mantra, I want to call it, like, I am funny, I can do this. And just that in itself
I belong here is a real big, and I think for me as well, sometimes, and we'll talk to professional athletes later on, they will probably have similar things, but especially with comedy and performance,
such a mind game.
It is. And I think a lot of us talk ourselves out of it. I know I do. There's some gigs that still now that I will go, I did one last night and it was a really high profile gig. In fact, we've got one of the guests coming on next week actually. And it was a real high profile gig. There was people who are the top of the food chain in terms of money, business, even stardom and celebrity. But the mindset going in was, oh no, this is my audience. I'm funny and I'm going to nail it. And it went like that. But there's been times recently where I've gone on stage where I'm going, they're not going to like this. They're not going to like, I'm not for this. Oh, the stage is a bit off, or, and
I've got a feeling this isn't my crowd. You're already making the decision.
And it goes exactly like that. I mean, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you surprise yourself. But I think if you can come in or go in with a mantra, it's not silly. It's not weak. It's not you being amateurish. It's you actually taking control of the situation and just reprogramming yourself and going, hey, are you okay? We're good. We belong here. We're funny. Let's do this.
You just triggered a memory of when he was talking about, was it Mitch?
Hedberg, yes.
Okay. And he was there, he's like, you okay? Are you sure? And that moment soon after heroin addiction, the deaths of about seven comedians he knew within a year after he chose to become sober, as that reminder and inspiration to keep being sober. And I really found that really powerful to hear, because, you're looking for signs to probably fall off the wagon and go, it's not too bad, like he was saying.
Justification.
I'll just maybe not take as much next time, as much cocaine. But actually to have that, it's a very real reality to face. If you see people and care about deeply pass away, or, have that that high drug addiction where they've lost their life, that is such an incentive to stay sober. And I really admired his ability to talk to us about that today. And I loved how he was sharing very practical tips to become sober right now, not tomorrow or next week or when the official AA meeting is. They're around online 24 hours a day.
Because sometimes people think, oh, it's New Zealand. I have to wait for, and it is. We have to wait for
or I'll wait for New Year's, or I'll wait for after that holiday. But it's actually, if you're even thinking about it, you can start right this second. And I love that practical advice for anyone who's thinking, it's taking over and I need to get into recovery.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to put all of Craig's stuff in the description. His YouTube stand-up comedy special is actually very, very funny. And you can see Mike McCready in that. I can absolutely vouch for that. It's called The Worst Stand-Up Comedy Special of All Time. And it's very, very funny. You should go watch it. And also we'll put his podcast as well with his co-host, which is a band member from Five Finger Death Punch. And I think his name's Dave, but I can't remember. But yes, contact us on all our socials. We'd love to hear from you, and give us a like, share, and a comment as well. We'd love for you to hype up the video and to help spread the message across to as much people as you can. Share it if you will. So thanks for watching Stand Up Again with Sophie and Nick Rado. We'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time, guys.